Last time on Mega64 Movie Club, we were rudely interrupted by an act of God, a blast of thunder from the skies that cut our episode short. We had Sean had a whole monologue about Ghost in the Shell. He wanted to
I wrote a poem about it, but
all of it cut short by this force of nature. But today, we're going to talk about a different force of nature. A bolt of lightning from the skies made of kung fu that struck America in a similar loud fashion. This is the best intro I've ever given an episode.
Yeah. Yep. Well, good job, Rocco.
What was the movie? Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon. And we are filming this on the same day as the last episode, so if another storm breaks out in the middle of this episode, we apologize. It's out of our control.
Yeah.
But yes, today we are watching the Bruce Lee classic Enter the Dragon, the 1973 film that broke Bruce Lee to international audiences. I'd never seen a Bruce Lee movie before. I don't know if anybody out there, if you guys had ever seen one.
Never seen it.
Never.
Nobody. Everybody knows who Bruce Lee is. Nobody's seen any of his movies.
Yeah.
We shatter that today, and we're going to let you know if they're even worth watching because we watched it. What did you guys think of Enter the Dragon?
And, well, I was just going to say, just compared, again, another comparison to last week's episode. Once again, I know a million people, movies, characters, things that all derive, they took inspiration from Bruce Lee or, his philosophy or whatever. I know a million things that his imprint has been left on, but I never saw his original work. So, yeah, I was eager to check it out.
When we first started doing Movie Club, this is the kind of thing that I envisioned when we talked about it, where it's like, I've never seen this movie, didn't really care to, honestly, but I'm glad I should have seen this movie. It's an important movie.
Yeah.
And, when you suggested it, I was like, that's perfect. That's a perfect movie to watch for this. So I was excited. I also did not realize that Bruce Lee died before this came out.
Me neither. What the hell?
That blew my mind.
Yeah.
And what a bummer.
I didn't know that at all. I thought this was one of many. I knew he passed away very young, but I thought he had more after this that he saw released. I didn't know. I was totally in the dark on that.
He did. Bruce Lee is kind of like the Kurt Cobain of the film world. Instead of being in the 27 Club, he's in 32 Club. Bruce Lee died at the age of 32. But this film was going to be what broke him to a mainstream audience. Kind of like Nirvana's Nevermind album, a landmark album. This is a landmark film. But Sean, as you mentioned, he passed away before this movie was internationally released. And so he never really got to see his own fame. Something he worked so hard for his whole career. When he actually became worldwide famous, superstar, he was already dead.
Yeah, which is, the movie, I knew before I even saw this movie that this movie was kind of responsible for like the kung fu craze in the 70s. And everybody's kung fu fighting was a huge, that was a huge thing. And like Bruce Lee is what changed pop culture in America, and he didn't even know. That's crazy.
Yeah. What's funny is for this movie club, I did some research on this movie, but I didn't really do any research on Bruce Lee himself. But I had read I read a book a few years ago about Bruce Lee. So what I can remember from that book was that Bruce Lee was actually like in street gangs when he was young. And he did a lot of street fighting and street brawling and was a seasoned fighter, like a real fighter. And he came to America to teach people like Kung Fu and karate. He was one of the first people to like teach Westerners martial arts. And he was, a lot of people didn't like him. They resented him for that, especially like, from back home.
Right.
He wanted to transition to being a movie star, but he could never really get a role. In fact, the TV show Kung Fu, The Legendary Journey was he developed that himself. And then they gave it to David Carradine.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that. Wow.
I read that project, going to David Carradine, was what directly inspired him to make this movie, because he said, I need to make a movie for myself because they're never going to make me a star.
Huh.
But famously, like throughout his career, people thought he was bullshit. They're like, you're not really a fighter. You're just a movie star. And they would challenge him to fights. And he was always having to prove himself. This guy was a street brawler from like his teenage years. He never shied away from a fight. And even on filming this movie, there's reports of him kicking extras' asses left and right just to prove that he was a real fighter. And we'll talk about that as we go into it.
Yeah. I mean, you watch this movie and yeah, there's a lot of, movie magic everywhere, but like the dude can fucking fight. Like you can see that this is like, it's him just kicking the shit out of people. And it's like, yeah, maybe he couldn't defeat 20 guys at once, but like the way he moves his fists and stuff, like he knows what he's doing. Like, don't fight this guy.
Yeah, I had to pause this movie a couple times just to like rewind, because I'm a Bruce Lee nut. Like I'm a fan, even though I haven't seen his movies. I like the legend, and I've heard this guy punches fast. And I rewatched it because his hands move real fast.
Right.
I didn't think he did it that fast. I feel like I could probably take him.
Yeah. And he was no muscles too. Very weak looking man.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm way bigger than that guy. He could. I don't know. Good luck.
Yeah, I was surprised watching this movie by his physique. He is super lean, pure muscle. But today we have movie stars like The Rock, or even like a leaner martial artist like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Kickboxer. Bruce Lee was like, he was so tiny compared to these guys. That was something I really like noticed watching this as a fan of action movies. Yeah. Like this dude's not as buffed as the typical action movie star.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get into the movie here. Enter the Dragon. It starts with Bruce Lee at a Shaolin monk temple, and there's like a really lame fight scene that's super weak in the beginning of the movie. Bruce Lee himself directed that fight scene and insisted it be put in. I think he just wanted to prove that he could direct, but he proves the opposite because it's the worst part of the movie. But the beginning of the movie also has... Let me say this. For watching Movie Club, I watched this movie twice. And the first time I watched this movie, I didn't really enjoy it that much, especially these early parts of the film. And the second time I watched this movie, I kind of fell in love with it. I don't know what you guys feel about the movie at this point, if you liked it or not. Mm. Or if you want to say anything about that or save it.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was a great showcase of this guy, this personality. Like he's iconic personality. It can't be said enough. So it was a great showcase for him, and like it was a competent showcase of it. It wasn't just necessarily a vanity piece or it wasn't a boring thing. It was a great showcase for him. I don't know if I really loved it as a movie, but it was cool to see him in his element. And
I kind of felt like I had I feel like I was watching Ghost in the Shell again, where it's like all the shots of like them going just through like the streets of, I don't know where they were. I guess it was Hong Kong or China or wherever.
Yeah, Hong Kong.
And like the boats, like I loved all of that. Like you saw like all these like kids like in the fishing boats and like the women like paddling them with like babies strapped to them. It's like, oh, this is just like life here. This is not a movie set. They just went out and filmed the world here. And I loved that.
Yeah.
But when it came to the story itself, I was like, all right, this is like a 15-minute little story that they threw into this. I don't know. That's kind of how I...
So I feel the exact same way the first time I watched the movie. Yeah. And these early parts of the movie were extremely boring to me. The second time I watched the movie, it all clicked for me. And I realized I think I realized the appeal of Enter the Dragon the second time I watched it. This movie will show you how to be Bruce Lee. Now, it won't really show you how to be Bruce Lee, but these boring scenes in the beginning are just them talking, but he's talking about his fighting philosophy. And at first I was like, this is shot so shitty. This is so boring to watch. Like the directing is awful. But the second time I watched it, I was really listening to what Bruce Lee was saying, and he had some great quotes. One of my favorite ones is his fighting philosophy is like, when they expand, I contract. When they contract, I expand. And when there's an opportunity, I do not hit. It hits all by itself. He says these philosophical things throughout the beginning of the movie. He also like has a moment where, for no reason, kind of awkwardly, he has a training session with a young student.
Yeah.
First time I watched it, I was like, why would you put this scene here? You were in the middle of your setup. This fucks up the whole pacing of your movie. But the second time I watched it, I really absorbed the lesson he was trying to teach that kid. So I don't know. I feel like I definitely appreciated this more the second time.
Yeah.
It's so funny, like him when he's with that kid and he's like, "Don't think, feel."
Yeah.
That there's a character in the Dead or Alive games named Jan Lee who looks like Bruce Lee and literally says that to one of the other characters. I'm like, man, they didn't even hide it.
This movie inspired Dead or Alive characters. This movie inspired Tekken characters.
Oh, yeah, on and on.
This movie inspired Virtual Fighter characters.
Yeah.
Not Bruce Lee in general. This movie specifically.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And Sean, you were saying you really liked the opening shots of the city, and I read an interesting story about that. When the movie started, Bruce Lee was so nervous about filming this movie because he felt like he had so much writing on it. He couldn't show up on set. He refused to show up. He would give excuses like, I'm too nervous to do it. I need more time to prepare. And Warner Brothers was telling the director, like, you're in production. We've already given you money. Start fucking filming. So they just went out. They're like, we need to start filming this movie. And they just started filming shots of the city to give Bruce Lee a couple days to, like, get his nerves. And then I even went on to say the first scenes he had to be sitting down because he was shaking so much on camera.
Wow.
That all the scenes had to be filmed sitting until he felt comfortable enough to, like, stand and perform.
That's crazy.
Bruce Lee died of a brain aneurysm before this movie was released. Like, this movie kind of killed him. He was so stressed out and nervous about making it.
Yeah, I also read that they think maybe it was the painkillers he was on. I think that he needed because of this movie, that like that could have also contributed to him dying. Maybe it's both, or who knows, but.
And in regards to the plot being simple, I thought it was a stupid, shitty plot, but I felt like there was a lot more depth to it that I didn't notice the second time I watched it. There was like a lot of foreshadowing. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, for me, like, you know, I'm watching it and it's like, oh, this is like a Mortal Kombat situation where it's like they're all these fighters from all over the world are going to come here and they're going to fight on this island. Like, happens once every 3 years. All right, I'm into this. And then like the movie didn't really end up being what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was all about the tournament.
I was expecting Mortal Kombat and I got James Bond.
Yes, exactly.
But when I went in expecting James Bond, I appreciated this movie so much more. And it was way cooler the second time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into the plot. So Bruce Lee plays a character named, this is going to blow your mind, everybody. His name is Lee. And he's a part of a Shaolin temple, and he finds out that an ex-member of this Shaolin temple has gone rogue and has defiled the ways of the temple and has basically become an evil guy. His name is Han. He has a crazy island, and every 3 years he has a martial arts tournament, and they want Lee to go fight in it. But not just the Shaolin temple. This other government agency, he meets a guy by the name of Braithwaite. Is that his name? Something like that.
I think so.
Braithwaite. He's a British dude who basically tells him, here's the mission. We believe Han is doing illegal stuff on this island, but we can't prove it. We think that he's like making heroin, possibly, and he has some sort of like human trafficking ring going on there. And then Bruce Lee is like, why don't you just go in there with guns? And there's two things, which is kind of like a gimmick for this movie. One, the island is partially in international waters, but partially in a territory where the country, it's illegal to have guns.
Yes.
So you can't have guns on this island.
Right.
But also, Braithwaite, if that is his name, represents a government agency, like kind of an international spy agency. He's not with any one country, and their job is to find evidence and then present the evidence to countries who would care so that they can act. So this is basically an undercover reconnaissance mission. That's the setup here. And again, kind of all of this was presented in a way that was hard to follow the first time, but I mean, I picked it up, but the finer details were lost on me. So Bruce Lee is going to go enter this tournament, and then one other plot piece about this character is last time this tournament happened, the fighters and some of the henchmen for Mr. Han came to Bruce Lee's hometown and attacked his family, like on the street, randomly, and they chased his sister, and they were like gonna rape her, but she ended up committing suicide before that could happen. One of Han's henchmen, like, famously has a scar, and they don't know where it came from, but then we find out he got that scar in that encounter. So that will come into play later. We also meet these two other characters named Roper and Williams. Roper and Williams, I believe, are also the names of the characters in Double Dragon.
Are they?
I read that.
No.
I read that as a piece of trivia, that they're named after these characters, or that there are characters named after these guys in Double Dragon.
Interesting, yeah.
Or maybe I'm thinking of a different video game. Somebody out there can look it up and get the facts straight.
I just remember when I was a kid, one of the Double Dragon guys was named Billy Lee, and that pissed me off because it was like too many of the same noise. Bill Lee. I don't know. That always bugged me.
Billy.
Yeah.
Lee.
Let me see if I actually made a note about it here. Is there anything you guys want to say? Oh, wait. Here it is. Real quick. The popular 1980s martial arts video game Double Dragon features two enemies named Roper and Williams.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
There wasn't a Bobo in the game or in the movie? Was there a Bobo in this one?
There was a Bolo.
Oh, close enough.
Roper and Williams are the two other main characters in this movie. It's a rich white dude named Roper, and then this, hip black dude with a fro named Williams, who, I swear to God, if you tell me this isn't the inspiration for Eddie Gordo in Tekken, or in some way or another, then you have to find proof to prove otherwise. Because this, and I feel like this character went on to be pretty iconic. Yeah. And launched the career of this actor. I can't find it now. Jim Kelly, I believe, is his name. We get these interesting backstories with these characters on the way to the tournament. Roper is like a chronic gambler who's really in debt with the mafia, and so he has to flee America. So that's why he comes to this tournament. And then Williams was going to come to this tournament anyways, but then there's this awful scene where he has a run-in with the police, and he gets into a fight with them.
Yeah, and takes their cop car. I love that.
He beats their ass and steals their cop car. So he's got to get out of the country because this is 1973, and he's got to go to Hong Kong to win the tournament. Those are the main characters. The movie kind of follows those three guys on the good side, and then three guys on the bad side. Han, the guy running the tournament, his main henchman, O'Hara, who is the man who attacked Bruce Lee's family. And then this later super fighter who shows up named Bolo. So that's kind of the setup. Three guys on the good side, three guys on the bad side. They're going to fight in this tournament, and then Bruce Lee is going to explore this island and solve this mystery of what Han is really up to. That's the setup. That's the first act. So what do you guys want to say about Enter the Dragon at this point?
I mean, I think I already said it. I thought it was in Mortal Kombat at this point, but I was in. I was in. I don't know. I really was feeling it. I loved the aesthetic. I loved everything in this. The first act I thought was like great, super great.
What I like about this movie. I like the character backstories. I feel like they really took their time to make these characters interesting, to give them varied backstories, to give them more information than you would get about Mortal Kombat characters. These feel like human characters with real world motivations. They're not motivated by some sacred gem. They're not motivated, they're escaping some shit in America, and there's a chance to make money using their fighting skills, so they enter this tournament.
And I love, I forget his name, but the good guy who has a gambling problem. Like,
that's Roper.
I love how literally every time he's on camera, he always ends his line with, "You want to bet?" Like every single time. It's like, it's so shoved down your throat that this gambler, but I got a kick out of that.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that too.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning at this point. This movie is extremely 70s.
Yeah.
The dialogue, it's always snappy. Like Roper is like, at one point, he goes through a trap door and he goes, fooled again. Goes down an elevator. And there's this like worka soundtrack as Bruce Lee is like prowling around doing flips and stuff. Yeah. It's very 70s. But then you have to realize this is kind of the movie that set the tone for all that stuff in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another example of watching it the first time, hating it, not liking it, watching the second time, kind of loving it. In the tournament, whenever they kill people, it's always off camera. They'll like throw somebody on the ground, and then you'll see the fighter's face as he stomps and goes like, oh! And the first time I watched it, I was like, that's so fucking corny, man. Like, show me the kill.
Yeah.
Second time I watched it, I was like, you know what? This is why this thing is trope and generic. It's because this is the movie that established that as the aesthetic for Kung Fu.
Right.
And, you know, I laugh at it, but I also kind of appreciate it for that.
Yeah. I read, but you can't fucking miss this detail, that they recorded 0 audio there, and they did it all later, which is like it. I don't know what that was or why that was chosen, but it's like it wasn't even close to matching with like what they were saying and like the lips moving. It was just like what? Why was this a decision?
Let me tell you, and this might turn into a tangent, but you bring up a very interesting scenario here. The reason for that is because this movie was filmed with American crews and Chinese crews, and nobody on the set basically spoke the same language.
Oh, okay.
And there were so many problems because of that. I was reading some trivia that the American crew said that filming this in China with the Chinese crew and their equipment was like going back in time. Like going back a generation in film equipment and like doing it the way their fathers or grandfathers had to do it. I also read that they couldn't get actresses who were interested in playing prostitutes, so they had to hire real prostitutes.
Yeah.
To play those actresses. And they couldn't find enough actors to play like thugs and people who knew how to fight. So they got like competing triad gangs, basically these old street gangs that Bruce Lee used to be in. He brought them all on set.
Oh my God.
So there was fighting on set between the gangs, and these guys were challenging Bruce Lee to fights, and nobody was speaking the same language, and the American crew was like, "What the fuck is going on?" And when I was doing some research for this movie, I was looking on IMDb trivia, and there's this throwaway line, and it's like, production had to be shut down shortly because the body of a girl was found on the beach.
Oh.
And then they just move on, and I was like, can I get some more? Can I get some more detail on that?
Well, was there a murder on set?
You're telling me there were real gang members, competing gang members on set. You're telling me there were real prostitutes on set. They were on an island in international waters, and then dead bodies started showing up on the beach. Is there more context for that?
Oh my God.
I wish I had the story behind that, but that is literally the only mention of this supposed dead body is this throwaway trivia. Hey. They had to stop filming because they found a dead body one day.
This sounds like a podcast series that I would listen to, and they try to find out what happened. That's the kind of shit I would listen to.
Another crazy fact about this movie, I don't know if this is true. Sean, you said Bruce Lee was on painkillers.
Yeah.
I heard supposedly from the actor who played the Scarface villain, he said that Bruce Lee was on cannabis the whole time. And he said that Bruce Lee had a pile of brownies that he was eating nonstop in between takes.
Wow.
And I only mention that to just heighten the atmosphere of this podcast idea. You're bringing up that Bruce Lee is high off his fucking ass the whole time all of this is happening.
Yeah. Interesting.
These are just rumors and hearsay and stories and urban legends that kind of surround Enter the Dragon and the set.
I would watch a movie about the making of this movie. I would watch that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we need the Dolomite is my name of this film.
Into the Dragon.
It would probably be an Oscar-worthy film.
Yeah.
Or I feel like am I crazy? I feel like they've made that. Am I
Oh,
crazy?
really?
They actually probably did. There's so many like biopics about Bruce Lee. I'm sure this isn't.
Huh.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what I'm thinking of. Anyway.
All right. So as the movie progresses, the tournament starts, and Roper and Williams do really well in the tournament. They work together to like win bets. They get a little betting game going on. Bruce Lee gets to face off against the guy who is responsible for his sister's suicide, and I loved that scene.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
I was prepared for that to be the final battle of the movie.
Yeah.
But no, it was like his first time you see him fight. I'm like, oh, we're just going to fight him now. Okay, that's fine.
One of the things, again, on a second viewing, when he finds out that his sister died, he goes to visit her grave, and he has this line where he's like, I'm going to do something, and it's going to go against everything you've ever taught me, and you please find a way to forgive me. And I think what he's talking about is getting revenge on the guy who was responsible for his sister dying.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of this scene, it's a great scene because you get to see Bruce Lee whoop this guy's ass, but he like barely moves at all. He totally dominates him. It's like Neo at the end of The Matrix.
Yeah.
He kills the dude, and the first time I watched it, he had this like crazy look on his face. But then I realized watching it is like, oh my God, that's the thing. He's like guilty because he committed revenge on this guy. He really has this face of like he's almost crying about it. I don't know. On a second viewing, I felt like this movie had some depth to it, and that Bruce Lee was actually trying to do some real acting, and
Yeah.
I had a little bit of heart for me. That was maybe on a surface glance I missed.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that if I saw it again. Maybe that would sink in rather than just kind of all be part of the same spectacle.
I felt like there was quite a bit of foreshadowing and setup and payoff elements like that I kind of wasn't even expecting the first time and definitely missed,
Yeah.
So that's kind of the element with the tournament. He fights that guy. At nighttime, he explores the island. This kind of reminds me of Austin Powers when he explores the island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He kicks a bunch of guys' asses. Stuff happens. Han finds out. This is a cool scene. Han finds out somebody was exploring the island, but he doesn't know who. And he's like, it doesn't matter who because my guards suck and they need to be punished. And then we're introduced to this badass character named Bolo, who is like the most swole, muscular martial artist. And he basically fights all of the guards who were on duty last night and systematically kills them. I don't know what you guys thought about that scene, but it's like the true villain has finally revealed himself.
Right. But I thought it was fun. Well, I thought it was kind of funny because it's like, yeah, Bruce Lee just took those guys out. They were just doing their job. They didn't know anything was happening. And all of a sudden he would just, beat them up. And then they had to like fight for their lives essentially against like an impossible villain. Like there's no way these guys are going to win here. And it's like, Bruce Lee got all these guys killed. Like this is his fault that they're all dead. And then like later on in the movie, he keeps taking out more guards. I'm like, he's killing these guys too. Like he doesn't seem to care that he's just killing all these other people who I don't know if they're bad guys. I don't really know, but I just thought that was
I think we can assume they are because later on, we find out they all work for Han and he has an operation going here.
Yeah.
This Bolo character is played by Yang Si, who is the main villain in the film Bloodsport.
Yeah.
What do you want to say about that?
Oh, that's what that's all I was going to say is he looked familiar to me. And then, my brother is the one who has the box set of these movies. So I borrowed that from him to watch it. And when he came to check it out, he saw it on screen. He was like, I haven't watched this one yet. The guy from Bloodsport is in this. And it was like, oh yeah. I always mix Bloodsport with Kickboxer. I think I always mix those up, but I knew him from something. But anyway, I was shocked to see him.
Is amazing, and I will insist we do an episode on the movie Bloodsport one day because it's nothing else. Bloodsport inspired the video game Street Fighter 2, so I feel but this guy, this actor, he's in that. He's great. he kind of plays the prototype of that villain in this movie, like a less accomplished version of that villain.
Hey,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, which of those movies has the Kumite? You got to go to the
That's
Kumite.
Bloodsport.
Okay, great. I love Bloodsport. I always, for some reason, I mix those up. So yeah, we're on the same page.
Did you watch that in New Zealand? I feel like I saw Bloodsport. Maybe I'm thinking of something else that we watched. Some fighting movie like that.
You're thinking of Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Well, so back to Enter the Dragon, Bolo destroys these guys, and then Han suspects that it wasn't Bruce Lee who did this, but that it was our Afro friend Williams. And so he basically blames Williams and then has him killed. Kills him. Han kills Williams. And then it's just the two main characters, Roper and Lee, left. You know, at the end of this movie, they basically discover that Han is not only making opium and shipping it all over the world, he's kidnapping girls all over the world, selling them into prostitution, getting them high on drugs. He's also just kidnapping men and selling them into forced labor, slavery. Roper refers to this as Shanghaiing the guys, the men. Bruce Lee, his whole mission was to discover this was going on and find a secret radio and radio for help so that, a government agency could come in and break this all up. He's able to do this, but towards the end of the movie, he has to fight all the guards. He gets captured. He has to fight Bolo and he has to fight Han. It kind of does turn into Mortal Kombat towards the end, right?
Yeah.
Couple things I will say, that's pretty much the plot, and now we can just kind of vamp on it. There's a scene in this movie where Bruce Lee has to sneak into a compound, but they guard the door with a cobra.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love this scene. He has a little bag on it. He has a little backpack that he just takes the cobra and slips it into. And then later on, when he needs to sneak into the radio room, he takes the cobra and throws it in there to scare those guys out.
Yeah.
That was a real cobra.
Oh, I could tell.
Yeah, I could tell too, and yet I didn't believe it, and so I had to look it up, and it was a real cobra.
Yeah, he's fucking smacking this thing to piss it off while he's holding it. Craziest shit I've ever seen.
Oh my god!
Did you do any research on that? Do you know the story behind that cobra?
No.
No.
Okay, so they needed a cobra for this scene. They got it locally in Hong Kong from a local pet shop. The pet shop owner promised them that the cobra had been defanged.
Okay.
The cobra had not been defanged. Cool. Bruce Lee slapped this cobra 10 times. He did 10 takes.
Oh my
God. And on
God.
the final take, this thing fucking bit him.
Oh my God.
The cobra.
So that was the final take, huh?
It had its venom glands removed.
Oh.
But they didn't know that. So they were like, what the fuck? This thing was defanged. And clearly it has fangs, but then they're like, okay, it had the venom taken out. But they imagine the panic on set.
Well, he's too high to care,
Yeah, you're right. He probably should have slapped that cobra 10 or 20 more times.
Just snake bit me.
I saw this thing, and I was like, all these things that I'm seeing, no wonder this guy fucking died after this. I mean, this guy was doing crazy shit. It's all adds up.
Yeah, Rocco, did you want to say anything about any of these parts of the movie?
No, fuck that. Once they got that snake involved, I was just like, oh, this would have been the end of the journey for me.
I get nervous in the 70s when you see animals.
Yeah.
Because you never know. Even the praying mantis fight, I'm like, we're going to see some shit here. But then with the snake, what are they going to do to the snake? Are they going to cut its head off? It's very possible. That could happen.
Yeah, it's interesting because this movie, they didn't do anything. This movie is surprisingly wholesome and not family friendly at the same time.
Yes.
All the fighting and violence is it's not that bad. It's kind of like an adventure. But then the content is he's trying to rescue these girls who are being forced into being prostitutes. At one point he finds these girls and she's banging on the cage help me, I'm 17 years old, I'm from California, where are you going?
Right.
Which I thought was kind of a funny line.
Crazy.
Yeah, going back to the animal thing, I feel the same way, Sean. That was instilled in my mind when I was a kid and I watched all the Planet of the Apes movies for the first time, and I watched them with my parents. We loved sci-fi movies, and so we watched all those, and there's a scene where they trip up the apes chasing them on horses, and those horses just fall down the side of a mountain along with the ape stunt actors,
Right.
And I'm like, how did they do that? How did they make it look like the horses fell? And my parents were like, no, they just tripped those horses. And I was like, okay, so if the movie is older than me and there's animal stuff, I'm going to skip.
They're probably going to be fucked up.
Yeah. It's just like, nah, I'm good. That was like mortifying to me.
I make notes for Movie Club, and sometimes I write like jokes that I want to say. And sometimes the jokes I write too much. It's like, I'm not going to say this on the show. And I was going to do this whole riff on how in this later part of the movie, Bruce Lee gets his shirt ripped and he has to tie it around his waist, He has like a onesie and it gets ripped.
Yeah.
I was going to do this whole joke about that guy who rips his shirt, this fucking low-level fighter, is the only person who lands a fucking punch on Bruce Lee in this whole movie. Like, nobody else can touch Bruce Lee, and this guy fucking gets in there and rips his shirt. It's such a small moment, but that's a legendary dude. Like,
yeah.
I'm watching the movie for the rest of that fight scene, and I'm just being like, you can't touch his fucking shirt. You're coming at him with a knife. You don't even get close to his fucking shirt. This and that, joking. And then, like, towards the end of that fight, one other guy gets a shot on this dude. He, like, wraps his arm around Bruce Lee, but then Bruce Lee, like, hits him and grabs him and holds him by the hair before breaking his neck for a minute,
Yeah.
And I was like, my whole bit about the guy ripping his shirt is legendary kind of goes out the window, because this other guy got a shot on him too.
Right.
That other guy was Jackie Chan.
Oh.
That guy who wraps his arms around him and then Bruce Lee holds him for a minute before breaking his neck is Jackie motherfucking Chan.
Whoa.
Oh, man.
And I looked it up, and Jackie Chan was in this movie, and he was doing all that stunt work, and at one point, this is going to break your heart. You're going to be sad for Jackie Chan.
Okay.
Bruce Lee, he was doing stuff with the sticks, and he accidentally hits Jackie Chan in the face. He's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And Jackie Chan was like, oh, it's cool. Do whatever you want. I'm here for you. And Bruce Lee's like, yo, I'm going to make sure you're in every one of my movies from now on.
Oh, no.
Bruce Lee died before this movie was released.
Oh, man.
Well, now here's the thing.
Yeah, and Jackie Chan was never heard from ever.
Exactly. Because I'm like, hey, you know what? Jackie Chan did just fine after all. Like, he didn't need that, but I'm sure in the moment he was fucking heartbroken.
Yeah. As was the world.
Yes.
So at the end of the movie, Bruce Lee, he has to fight Han, but he also has to fight Bolo, that guy from Bloodsport.
Yeah.
It was a kind of a disappointing fight, in my opinion. I don't know how you guys felt about it. But
yeah, it was okay. Yeah, it was all right.
Yeah, no, it was whatever.
It was whatever. But if you watch closely, and I rewound this to confirm that I didn't fucking imagine this. He fights Roper. He doesn't even fight Bruce Lee. He fights Roper, the rich guy character, right?
Right.
Roper kicks him in the balls so hard he dies.
Right.
Just to be clear, that's how that fight ends.
Right.
So,
yes.
I mean, I don't know if that like wins it an extra point in my book, or is another on the side of this fight sucks. You're watching this movie and this Bolo character single-handedly kills 5 guys, and you're not thinking like, well, all it takes is one wicked nut shot and this dude is gonna die.
He's toast.
And then I kind of thought about it and squirmed that because I just thought like, well, how hard did he have to kick his nuts to kill this guy? And it honestly started making my heart race a little bit. So, don't think about it too much.
Hey, been there. To me, been there. I've been at that threshold before, and
Near
I
death.
had a little bit more of a stronger fighter against me. Oh yeah. The end.
Yeah.
Totally. So we can give this movie some popcorn shakes. I feel like I could mention trivia or little facts about this all day. But
what I want to say real quick was the final fight between Bruce Lee and Hans. I thought went on so much longer than it needed to, and like the whole mirror sequence, like the Hall of Mirrors, was cool at first, but it was like, yo, end this fucking fight. This has been like 20 minutes, and I don't care. It was just too much.
Yeah, I think again the Hall of Mirrors thing I appreciate more just because when I knew it was coming, I kind of saw like the artistry of it.
Oh, it was very impressive, but
Yeah.
it was also but it was like, yo,
I'll tell you what, I was watching that sequence looking for a camera. I didn't see one.
I did the same
Yeah,
fucking thing.
yeah, me too.
So it definitely impressed me on a technical level. That was hard to film.
Yeah, I heard they went through like 8,000 mirrors or something.
Whoa.
Like
What?
Yeah, you'd think, oh yeah, like 800 mirrors. That's, a lot to go through. And supposedly they went through like 8,000 during the filming of this movie. It was like, how do you ever even get that many mirrors? Like,
That wasn't necessary. In that fight scene 20 minutes earlier, and you would only have to use like 500.
But I
Well,
kind of,
Bruce Lee
again,
agrees with you, Sean. Bruce Lee didn't think that fighting, the Hall of Mirrors, was a good climactic ending, and he kind of fought with the director about a lot of this movie.
Huh.
I was reading, Bruce Lee felt like the director was trying to take over this movie.
Oh.
And then what's funny is I believe this director went on to release another Bruce Lee movie 5 years later. After
But
Bruce Lee
he was dead. So how did that happen?
Yeah, he like repurposed previously filmed footage and like just cut it together into like a montage.
Oh,
Damn.
wow.
Or not a montage, but they recycled old footage and used unused footage to make it a posthumous release.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the mirror part, I liked for the kind of like, honestly, as I get older, I don't mind a movie like, creating kind of an interesting setting or a shot or a sequence and taking its time with it. So it doesn't bug me, but probably didn't have the content to justify the time. But still, like you said, couldn't see a camera in the damn thing. I'm impressed. So
yeah, I heard they created, I don't know what this is. They describe it in what I read as a special closet made out of mirrors with a hole in it.
Huh.
So that the camera could film at all times and blend into the mirror background.
I got one of those.
Made out of mirrors.
Cool.
Yeah.
You'll have to show me sometime. Dang, I had one more thing to say and your joke.
Oh,
So
sorry.
You ruined it, Rocco. You ruined it.
In a second, but
Yeah. Let me see if I have any other notes. I thought the movie was made for $850,000, and after everything is made, it made $90 million. So this was a huge hit.
90 times the budget is a pretty good return.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
All I was gonna say was after you watch this, it kind of makes you feel bad about that scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I thought that too. Where it's like,
they feature him in the movie. Yeah, here's him getting his ass kicked by an ex.
yeah, that would never happen. Bruce Lee would have destroyed Brad Pitt.
and when when that movie came out, the Bruce Lee estate was like fucking pissed.
Yeah.
And I got it then, but I get it way more now. Where it's just like,
I get it more than ever. Personally, and for whatever it's worth, I always took that entire movie is full of exaggerated things that are not in reality. I mean, you even look at the ending. I mean, all of that is not, to me, it's all a fantasy. So I never took it. I took it that way. Like, oh yeah, right. Okay.
right.
Well,
but were they valid to be mad about that? Yes, 100%.
We're getting into Once Upon a Time in America, and I did see that scene with Bruce
Hollywood.
Lee in it. If you haven't seen that movie, Brad Pitt plays a stunt man in Hollywood, and at one point he sees Bruce Lee backstage and kind of challenges him to a fight. And in that movie, when I saw it, I thought, I'd heard stories that Bruce Lee actually did this. Maybe not with this guy, maybe not in this way, but in some form, this actually did happen.
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say. This movie starts with Bruce Lee's kind of philosophy. And, a lot of it is like, feel, don't think.
Right.
And, his master tells him, like, your enemy will use a lot of illusions and images, so you have to shatter through those to really defeat him. And then at the end of the movie, he's in the Hall of Mirrors, and he can't fucking see this guy. He can't hit him. And he has this moment where you hear his mentor, remember, the enemy will use many illusions and and you must shatter them. And it's a total like Star Wars moment.
I was just gonna say that was totally turn the computer off, Luke.
This, and everything. Like this movie predates Star Wars by a good 5 years or more. Yeah. It was released in 1973, but when I just think that I wouldn't be surprised to find that George Lucas was inspired by Enter the Dragon. There's a lot of overlapping stuff with the Force and your mentor's words coming to you at the final moment.
Yeah.
Not that Enter the Dragon invented that, but I think it's funny that so many people kind of attribute that to Star Wars, iconically, like, oh, that's from Star Wars. It's like, well, this movie did it first.
Yeah.
That's one example.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that the passing the torch of that classic storytelling and, tapping into a bigger mythological thing, journey and whatever. And so it is interesting seeing that. And I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, so I really like this movie. I watched it twice. If I was reviewing this movie after my first viewing, I would give it a lower score than what I'm prepared to give it today. Yeah. But what did you guys think?
I liked it. A lot of like the fight scenes, I'm like looking at it, it's like he's making contact a couple times. You're not faking some of this. Like I'm sure, a lot of it is whatever, but there are some shots like, oh, that guy got kicked in the face for sure, whatever.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I loved the aesthetic of it. I didn't get the movie I expected, but I'm not mad at it for that reason. I just kind of wish I cared more about the characters overall, but it's, whatever.
Yeah.
Should I give a shaker thing or am I waiting?
Well, before you give it a shaker, what's your opinion on Bruce Lee movies in general, having seen Enter the Dragon?
Well, I mean, it's the only one I've seen.
Yeah, exactly. So now you have an opinion on Bruce Lee.
Right. No, I think, I get the hype. Like the dude, like you see him move his fist and it's like, this guy is like a master at martial arts and he's a good looking guy who's an actor. So like, he was the whole package for that type of thing. I don't know. I get why he is a legend.
Okay, cool. What about you, Rocco?
Yeah. I think he's a personality. He's iconic. Like, so, in that sense, this movie was awesome to watch because it was a great vehicle for him. And it wasn't, for lack of a better term, bullshitty. Like it was it was like a really competently told, story, and it was fun, but it's not my kind of movie. It's not my kind of film. Personally, it didn't have the depth of things that I kind of look for, but great for him, and he rules. So, I mean, that's I had a great time watching it because of him.
Yeah, like when he's all getting cut up by that in the final fight.
Yeah,
like every time he looks more badass. Like he's like covered in these like bloody scars. He's still fighting. It's like, yeah, this guy fucking rules. Like, you get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think Bruce Lee is cool. That's the main takeaway from watching this movie.
Yeah.
Maybe the story isn't your bag of tea. Maybe it's a little long, and maybe the fighting isn't even as impressive as you would hope. But Bruce Lee kind of lives up to the legend.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, well, we can give it popcorn shakes. I'll start because I picked this movie. I give this... It's hard. Like I said, I liked it more the second time.
Yeah.
But, it's not like the greatest movie ever made. I hate to do half stars.
Right.
I would give it a 3.5.
See, you see why we do this, though, Derek. You've come to the other side on it now.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it 4 stars.
Wow.
After 2 viewings, but 3 stars after 1 because I liked it more the second time.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, I know you don't do halves. I'll still do a half. You can round up if you choose, but to me, this is a solid middle of the road 2.5 stars. Love the fighting, love Bruce Lee, but the story was whatever.
Yeah, it's a 2 for me. It's nothing I would really want to rewatch. I think he is fascinating. And it did have great characters. I mean, the setup of this movie was very inspirational. You know, I feel a little bit like I'm in Ghost in the Shell again in that sense, where I see everything that it inspired. Do I want to watch the actual thing again? You know, I would watch Ghost in the Shell again for its artistic value and all that. This, probably not, but Bruce Lee rules. So, yeah, 2. It's a 2 for me.
Yeah. You know, final thing I'll say about this, and this is kind of how I started this episode. I feel like at the beginning of the movie, they make a promise. This movie's going to show you how to be Bruce Lee. And I feel like that is kind of the appeal to it. Like, if you want to be somebody like Bruce Lee or aspire to be a character like that, you know, like trained and highly disciplined,
yeah,
I think this movie will appeal to you more. On repeated viewings, I think you'll glean more and more about kind of Bruce Lee's philosophy.
Yeah.
Because I think he puts a lot of his own personality in this movie, and that's what comes through. And I feel like that's kind of what is the make or break thing on this movie. Like, how much do you really like Bruce Lee, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're not going to know that until you watch a Bruce Lee movie. So you don't know until you know.
Yeah, and I keep comparing to Ghost in the Shell because we watch these in a close proximity of time, and that's my frame of reference. But there really are a lot of similarities in just in the sense of cultural impact and things like that. And I will say once again, no matter what I've said, you should watch this. It's still culturally significant. I think they even put it in like the National Film Archive for that very reason. It's culturally significant. So no matter the review, I think this is one where I recommend either way, no matter what.
Okay, great. So what is the next movie we're going to be watching?
That is a great question, and usually I have one prepared, and I'm just going to have to wing this out. I'm going to pick a movie that I've seen once before. I think we maybe all seen it, and I didn't really care for it. So that sounds like a weird choice to pick. But I think it's a very important movie for Mega64, and I think watching it again now with this take, maybe it has a different, view for us. I'm going to choose Be Kind, Rewind.
Oh, okay.
With Jack Black and Mos Def, Michelle Gondry, but a lot of that is what has inspired our In 5 Minutes series. So I think we'll look at it again with that look at it.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't revisited. I did see that in a theater right when it came out. I've like no memory of it.
Yeah, same here. Same here. So.
All right. Well, that's the end of this episode then, everybody. We're going to watch Be Kind, Rewind, Mos Def, Jack Black, Michelle Gondry. That'll be fun.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis. I think Liam Neeson shows up. The Ghostbusters are in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen it. I'll let you know next time on Movie Club.
Take care, everybody. Wait.
Nothing.
Man, I thought, kind of disappointing after the last one.
No.
Well, I guess goodbye, guys.